What's happening, chats? Welcome to Chaps Chat with me, Dom.
Me, Ollie.
And our new friend, Ryan, who's come to join us for the day. So, how are you doing, Ryan?
Hey everyone, how you doing?
So, really good to have another guest come on the podcast and obviously be able to give a wider perspective. I think definitely there's going to be some interesting points to speak about today, but also some perspectives given that are maybe outside of what me and Ollie have experienced on our mental health journey, which is obviously what we're aiming to do and give people, I guess, as much exposure to the information that can help them as possible. So yeah, thanks for coming on, Ryan. So I think just to start off, it would be good to speak a little bit about how you came across Chaps Chat as a podcast.
Cool, cheers for having me, boys. It's obviously great to be here.
Yeah,
good to have you.
Connected with people like-minded in the community as well. So yeah, you boys popped up on my Instagram, I think, using the old Instagram hashtags, mental health awareness. I had a little flick through. I think I saw some of your content, you saw some of mine, and I was like, interesting. So I kind of gave it a little look, saw some of the stuff you were doing. I was like, this is quality. This is kind of the stuff I'm about as well. So we were very aligned on that journey. Both seem cool chaps as well, fun. Yeah. So I was like,
give us time.
Yeah.
I was like, as we go.
Saw you had this podcast. Gave a few episodes a listen. I was like, this is quality, and kind of just wanted to get involved. And I saw some of the services you're offering and support you're giving to people. And I was like, just seem aligned. Seemed like we're cool guys. Seemed like networking's so important, isn't it? Especially in this this community. So yeah. It's always good to make new friends.
Yeah, definitely. I think also what's I think really good about meeting other people within the community is it's just such a learning experience also for us, because obviously for me, I'm keen to keep furthering my knowledge about mental health in general. The more that I guess me and Ollie kind of progress in this area, and I think that obviously probably the same for yourself as well. And I think what's good, obviously, is kind of what we spoke to before, maybe slightly different audiences compared to Chaps Chat and your Instagram channel, Gents Who Vent. So I definitely think there's going to be benefits to both audiences as well, even outside of us three, that kind of get to see content from maybe a little bit of a different source than they usually would. But yeah, I feel like it's kind of. It's funny how I feel like we had one guest on before, and it's funny how natural it always kind of seems to kind of ease into the conversation with people who are kind of doing similar things to you, because again, like I said before, we are just very much aligned, I guess, in trying to make some change in this area. So before we obviously get into things, it would be good, I think, for the audience to know a little bit about your mental health journey as a whole, and I think that will give some really good context in terms of what we'll discuss further on in the podcast.
Yeah, no, sick. Buckle up. I'll try and break 13 years of shit into 8 minutes. Yeah,
we've been spreading it out this episode.
Like reading the. I forgot what it's called in a book. But
you don't read many of them.
No, cool. So yeah, I've it's been a bit of a weird one. So it all kind of started for me probably back in 2008. So my dad passed away when I was a teenager. I was 12 years old, and obviously that was a fucking shock to the system. You're going through puberty, you're becoming a man. I was very hormonal anyway. I was quite grumpy and stuff like that, and that was tough. And then just a sequence of events at that time in 2008, 2009, basically had a family friends, family friends, but basically my second family. So there was a mother, as a weird a little bit. Anne and Kev, basically. So it was my mum and dad's best mates who we spent Christmases with, and they were as a four, they were best pals. Yeah. So they were my second parents in a way, and looked after me when my dad was ill and things like that. And then within 18 months, both of them and my dad were dead. Wow. It was really quick. For a young teenager, just trying to process why is this happening? Is it me? And at the time, I thought it was me. I was I'm fucking cursed.
You do think things lead back to yourself quite easy in a lot of scenarios.
And I was just a bit confused. And me and my mum had a bit of a hothead relationship because she was obviously distraught. She went through way more than me, and coped with it really well. My older brother kind of was a bit distant at the time. He just moved out, but he was still around to support me and stuff. But yeah, and then being new to secondary school, it was just loads. It was a lot to take in. So that was part of that. That was the kind of start of it, and feeling that kind of feeling of depression and just low, just that confused relationship with the world and life. It was something quite I was exposed to from quite a young age. Obviously, at the time, I didn't know what the fuck it was or what those feelings were.
It's a dark place to be in.
Yeah.
I think experiencing grief at that age, especially from your dad, really sorry to hear that. And of course to the other two family friends who basically family, is massive. Like these are your role models and your guiders in life, and to lose 3 of them in the space of 18 months at 12 years of age, 13 is a really, really impactful thing. So I could only imagine the amount of strain that it had on you. And yeah, as you say, going into school as well, like when you're going into high school, it's a daunting thing at that age. You're a kid, aren't you? So obviously a lot going on at that time. And as you said, like the whole thing about being cursed, I felt the same. Like with people who I've lost, I think scared to get attached to people. Honestly,
same. Yeah, still same to this day, probably.
Yeah, same to this day. Yeah, and I think, fucking hell, like what's going on? You know what I mean?
Yeah, you have to protect yourself, didn't you? Because like building relationships can be fucking tough, and like you say, it's like, well, if I get attached and that happens again, like how am I going to cope with it? Like, I don't want to put myself through that, and it is tough. You got like to let those guards down. Like it's probably the same with like intimate relationships as well. To be fair, for me, like it's all very interesting. Like looking back and like the learnings of it, like, as you get more of an understanding of you as a person as well, it's like, oh, sure enough, like this is why I do this, or this might be why I do that. Like
and I'm again, like even in intimate relationships, I get quite attached as well. Yeah, and I'm not sure. Maybe it is because of the grief, and you know you've lost that amount of love before that you try and regain that with someone else, and when there's a sign that that's going to go again, and in an intimate relationship, you know, if it's not by that person dying, just by the relationship breaking down or someone leaving, it still feels like someone's tore a bit of your heart out.
Yeah.
So it's painful. It can impact you, can't it, for the rest of your life, losing people.
But it's good as well. I feel like that we're in a place where you can kind of look back and I guess identify certain things and kind of why we are the way we are, because I feel like that's all a big part of like the learning process and overcoming certain things as well. But for me, like I experienced the worst of my depression probably a period between 15 to 18, 19, 20, and it was very, like life in general was just very overwhelming at that point then, but with that as well, it was incredibly overwhelming. So with all that you had to go on, I can appreciate at an age of 12 as well how kind of like how that must have thrown you in every direction. And it's like you kind of like that's the point where you're kind of just I guess learning in the life in the run up to where you actually get released out into the world. But sometimes it kind of having so much going on, like for me it took my thoughts away from kind of being able to focus on that side of things and probably focus more on ourselves and the next stage in our life. And for yourself, I can imagine it must have been the same as that.
Yeah, like 15 to 18, that's definitely like a struggle. Like that's a big age. Like, I say, again, it's like almost like categories of age, isn't it? Like there's different steps of the journey. Like that's like I was like step into puberty and teenager. That's like the step into manhood. Manhood, I suppose. Like so, there's a pressure on you, isn't there? So like. I can completely empathise with that as well.
Yeah, I think, and you described it well there, it's a pressure, because I feel like men carry that pressure a lot with them. And like, I'm not saying that women don't, right? I can only obviously speak for just how I felt. And it's like, you kind of carry the pressure. It's like, you kind of feel like you're not good enough or you're not doing as well as you should be. And I feel like, don't get me wrong, like, there can still be certain points now where like the thought could cross my mind is like, oh, you should be doing better than that. But now but generally in the circumstances where I know I can do better. Whereas before it was like, really not logical circumstances, and it's like at this stage, like you're young then as well, it's like you only have the ability to do so much. But I feel like for me, I almost felt like I was in limbo at that age, you know? And it's like, what am I doing? Like
there's nothing to like benchmark yourself against.
No.
Well, not that you should be, but like yeah, I completely agree. Like there's been times where, especially with the resilience, like if you become accustomed to stuff and you battle through those dark times at those ages, like I'm sure you boys have probably called this before, but like people are like, oh, you're a mature head on young shoulders kind of thing, and you're like, or people are like, oh, you cope with that well, like, or like like the wisdom kind of thing and the maturity. I'm like, yeah, but it's not something we like taught. It's not like out of our choice to
grown up fast.
Yeah,
like that grown up fast thing. I did grow up fast because the situations I've been in and people that I was with. Same with you, Dom, and same with you.
Yeah,
and I think. It's not a good thing to grow up fast. Like, it's not, because you really need to learn who you are in your mind first. And when all these impactful situations happen in your life, it's destructed that.
Yeah,
so it's got to stop, and like you're still at a point where your brain is really expanding. It's like a sponge, and you're so used to the bad feelings and bad things happening. It's like you're set up for the worst.
Yeah, literally.
It probably has a big impact on it does have a big impact on who you become as well. And I feel like that could be positive or negative. Like I would say, probably for all of us sitting here, it's had a positive impact because we can look back, identified like what's happened to us, and been able to take steps in life to kind of try and help that. But if you're still stuck in that and you're dwelling, then you're going to be at a place where if I had been still in the same mindset as I was then, there's a lot of question marks on that situation, you know. So I do feel quite grateful for kind of, I guess, being able to identify certain things moving back. But it seems like a lot of it, that teenage age is an age where a lot of mental health issues begin with most men, and there's a question mark behind why that is. Like obviously there's scenarios like myself where it's just more like, I don't know, whereas maybe for yourself where there was actually big losses in your life, whereas for someone like myself where I kind of fell into it and at the time I didn't really know why, but like I feel at that age there's probably steps that could be put in place in schools and stuff like that to either educate children at that age on this, or just kind of have some structure to know that, okay, you might have some bad thoughts sometimes, but don't let that rule you, you know. But I don't even know really if there is anything in schools that covers that, to be honest with you.
No, it's a shame. Like one thing, like that's another part of the journey was like I was living alone with my mum for like 6 years, like 6 years, just me and her. Like she couldn't work, and like it was struggling financially. I was also getting bullied at school, sick. No, but it was like so 6 years living with my mum, and then I didn't learn until I was 19 that she had like a pretty severe mental illness. She's got like a schizoaffective disorder. Okay. And obviously, and like she was like super medicated, like she was always asleep. She was really bad with money. But as a teenager, I just thought it was fucking normal. Yeah. And like it's kind of interesting because like obviously I don't think the school would have had any idea about my circumstances and that. They just saw me not going to school, like.
Really? Was it not? Did they not?
To be honest, I don't know how they would have. Like my mum was actually pretty healthy, ish back then. Like she was in a good place. It wasn't until I started like moving away that things started going a bit more downhill. But like in school, it's like there was still behaviours where I was like, again, it's a difficult question because I don't know how they would have picked it up because I wasn't aware. That
is a good point as well, to be honest. If you're not aware yourself, like how do you tell someone to help you? But I mean, from my point of view, it's like I don't remember really there being any support like that in school. Like not that like I reached out to that or again like notified anyone of it, but I feel like out here it's like when I've spoken with professionals, like at probably the worst points, they've been able to see in me very quickly what I was dealing with. I feel like maybe if there was more funding for those types of personalities to be in school and actually kind of be there and be working with the kids in a generic sense, you know, because what me and Ollie were saying this earlier is just like you want to be proactive, not reactive, right? So like it's everything mental health right now is reactive. So it's like, okay,
so you wait till you're actually at the lowest.
I'm fucked. Can you help me? Do you know what I mean? So like when really it's like let's learn the tools to kind of like when we're in that situation to kind of help ourselves. Don't get me wrong, we may need more support as well, but I think definitely having those tools initially would probably lessen maybe a lot of the effects for certain people at that age, or just make it like it's not going to be an easy experience anyway, but maybe an easier experience than it would have been anyway, to be honest.
100%. I feel like in a classroom, 30 odd kids, and you got one teacher in there, and when you did have a kid who was acting out of the norm and was bad behaved or had different behavioural patterns, then they bring in the teaching assistant to sit with them. A teaching assistant isn't equipped with knowledge and skill to deal with a child who's going through things, right? And I was speaking to someone a couple of weeks ago, a teaching assistant, who said that this child's mum was taken away from her and she was going into a new family, and the child asked the teaching assistant to go on the journey with her and to actually, you know, transition her into a new family. And I asked the question. I was like, was there any training on that at all? Like for your sort of side of things? Not at all. Not one.
22 grand a year, and she's like,
literally, like
all this pressure.
How mad is that? And you're right. There should be in schools where there is a professional who's experienced in dealing with young children and understands how a young child's mind can work and behavioural patterns, and maybe doesn't have to be so impactful because no kid wants that because they might feel embarrassed. But even sitting in a classroom monitoring kids on a daily basis in the back of the classroom is something that can help, and then reach out to the
Yeah,
parents.
I did have something to come back to me. Like, so the first person I probably ever spoke to about my mental health was a school nurse, but like a physical school nurse. So she probably thought I just banged my head. But again, it was reactive. Like, I just remember like just sick of feeling like this. Again, didn't know what it was. I was just sick of feeling low, and I walked out my lesson one day, and I just walked into the nurse and just like, I think I've described this before in another podcast, but I can't actually remember what I said. It was like a movie where like it was like slow motion. I see like the nurse just like her face changing, and me just like blurting all this stuff out, and then just like I think she cried, and like she's like, "Oh, darling, you need help, don't you?" And I don't think she knew what to do. But like the school were actually at that point good. Like my form tutor, Mr. Davies, shout out. He was a fucking hero, man. Like in terms of role models, like you say, like I was barely ever going to school because I was obviously like grieving, and like my mum, because of her illness, and like she's like super protective of me. She would rather me be at home knowing where I'm safe. So I was barely ever going to school. But like my mini school and my form tutor were like quality. I just like ringing my mum up. It's like, pass me the phone to Ryan. I'll be like at home, like fucking just like emotionless. He's like, if you ever need to come out of the classroom, come have a cup of tea with me, mate. Nice. Just come out. And like again, like, I don't think he was like fully aware of like my mum's situation, but he knew like how to support me and like what I needed.
That's it. And this is what we're trying to do here with Chaps Chat as well. It's like you might not have the qualifications to do that. You might not be a professional or a therapist. Yeah. But just offering that support by saying you could come and talk to me, and especially to a young child, a teacher. I had a maths teacher, Mr. Lee, same as that, brilliant teacher, really engaging with the kids, like actually give the shit about them. Yeah. Like that's what it comes down to, and that's massive, especially for you, especially after losing your role models. That must have been really quite a good feeling to have, and you know, that support. Even if it wasn't used to the best because you was going through a lot, but just to know that someone is there is so beneficial.
Well, he was, so there was in 2008, when I was going to school, like, so I was managing to like keep up with my, even though I was barely going, I was somehow managed to keep up with my schoolwork, and basically he nominated me for like this like a local award, like it was like a good friend and young carer award, because basically I was like, when I was in school, I was like going to visit my dad in hospital a lot with my mum, and I was like trying to be a support to my mum and that, and like keeping up with my schoolwork. And he nominated me for this award, which I still to this day I was like not worthy of that kind of thing, because there was like some fucking amazing young people there, but like just the fact that he had the confidence to back me. And then when I won it, obviously my confidence was like,
you won it.
Yeah, it was like a bit of self love, like self worth. So like me getting my confidence, like man, like even though he obviously did that for like his reasons, but it was just like I don't think he knows how much that. Impact me as like a young person, like having role models again. So it's just like the smallest influence to some people is like goes the longest way. You know what I mean? Like little chats like this, like you probably have boys that come like, can we go for a coffee? You have a 15-minute chat, and you don't know how much you've changed their life. Or
that's it. Yeah, it's so true. And like being in the same boat as people and going through grief, going through depression, anxiety, we understand that it does help when someone says, do you want to go for a talk or anything, or actually just shows you a little bit of interest that they care about you.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it is. And especially as men, like, as you know, we always say this, you're supposed to be macho and, you know, it's just the man up thing and all this, but mate, we're human at the end of the day, and sometimes you need a little bit of loving.
That's it, mate. Like, everyone, like people don't want to say it, but everyone wants to be loved, mate. You know what I mean? Like that's what it is. It's like, do you know what I mean? Well, there might be some geezer out there who don't want to be let him live his life, innit? Do you know what I mean? But yeah, mate, it's difficult. I think that definitely is significant, and it's like for me in any aspect of life, it's always the little things, and it's like again, like some people like one thing that speaks kind of volumes, similar to what you said, like in I guess the type of scenario is, I don't know if you ever seen it, but there's a video of Ian Wright in a documentary,
and his teacher
comes back.
He thought he was dead.
Yeah, it's so amazing, man.
That was cool as fuck.
That touched me. I still watch it. You know, they took it off YouTube, the whole episode.
Did they?
Yeah,
but that
snippet, TV, that snippet's still there. Yeah. I think because he switched to BBC or something, they took it down. But mate, and like his actual life story is mad. But going on to that specific bit, his faith is completely shot because that person impacted him just by sitting him down and going through things with him and putting him on the right path. A male role model is very, very important when you're a child. Standard.
Yeah,
for sure.
Like, do you know what? It's like, without going to, I was kind of missing that, to be honest. I was missing that. and it really impacted like the way my life changed from maybe the time of starting secondary school to maybe becoming 20, and it wasn't outside. It wasn't in a good way, you know. But now I'm not saying that definitely things wouldn't have played out the same way it would, but definitely would have made a difference to it, because in a sense, like, our morals are who we are sometimes, and it's like we kind of, you'll find people around you, the people who are like this situation, like-minded individuals, right? But I definitely think, like, I never found that in another male role model, but there was a scenario I was in where I spoke to a lady quite a bit, and that massively helped me. But again, it's like, I think at that age, it's just like, sometimes it's like don't get me wrong, like, at that age, like, I had immediate family that I knew that cared, but sometimes it just like, it's almost like you're so sympathetic to yourself that you feel like no one is around you there for you, and it's like, I kind of found in that there was someone like who seemed like they did care, you know, and that made a big difference for me. So definitely think that we need more role models out there in general for people, just good people models, you know. Like, there's not loads of them out there, but there's loads of good people out there, but maybe they're not in the right circumstances to kind of give that knowledge to kids and stuff. And I think, like, definitely down the line with schools, it comes down to that, like anything, funding, you know. Like, I think that is like, because I used to be in a job where I used to work with schools, and it gave me insight to actually how it works in terms of, like, if you need, they call it one-to-one teaching assistants, if you need that for a child. And I can just say, like, I was a kid who's very, very naughty in school, and like that it was, you're more looked at, no one asked a question behind, like, why is he being like that? Do you know what I mean? And I can look back now, and it was like, I was just very, very angry around some of the personal situations I was experiencing. But like, again, like, back onto like the one-to-one, which is generally for like someone with, a lot of the time, with special needs. Like, I never worked with one-to-one for like mental health teaching assistants, but you do get those as well. But it's based off, you have to get funding for that specific child, and like the funding's different from borough to borough. So you could be in a borough that's more affluent and you would get less funding, but in a lot of London boroughs there's an affluent side and there's a non-affluent side, so it works out that the funding isn't there for these kids, so there needs to be change on that, I think.
But also, to go through that process of actually getting that funding, right, must be a long one, and by that time, like, the child might be at such a behaviour level that it's really bad that the school need to dismiss him, or dismiss her, don't matter, the boy or girl in that scenario. And then it's too late. Yeah.
And then that conflict, because I knew a few kids actually that like moved around school, and you think, oh, like they say, it's a little shit. It's like, no. It's like, it's fucking...
You don't know what's going on in my head. Like, I'm not acting up because I want to, because I'm actually...
Like, I'm going home with my parents.
You don't know why it is then, yeah, it's like, you don't really, like, don't get me wrong, because like, at the time, you might be being disruptive, and you think some of the time you have the illusion that you're actually enjoying it, but the illusion is that you don't know why you're acting out this way. Because if you know me, like, year 6 compared to like maybe year 8, like you wouldn't really see the correlation, right? And it's just like,
so true,
like, mate. I mean, who's this? His twin brother I never met. You know what I mean?
What happened?
Yeah, fucking hell.
You've been gone 6 weeks.
Yeah, trust me. It was a crazy time though, but like I do love to look back and reflect on this, right? But I just think they're like very, very misunderstood, and it's like there was certain scenarios maybe where you feel like there was teachers that. Like, I had a teacher, right, that she used to always get my English teacher. I actually can't remember her name, but if she ever saw this, she'll know who she is. That's what I say. But it's like, she used to get me to the front of the class all the time and read the book, like actually reading to people. Just obviously that took me away from being disruptive, but I actually... like, we really used to enjoy... I enjoy reading now. I lost that for a little bit of time. But when I was a young kid, I used to read loads. So she actually saw something in me that I really enjoyed and kind of utilised that. But could probably see that behind there was a reason behind. But again, it's like, it's not teachers' job description to... Obviously, some of them do it off the back of their kindness of their heart, right? But it's not their job to delve into that, really. Like, why is that going on? What's wrong with you? Extra, and they might not have the tools to go about that. So it's just like, they might feel like they want to in that circumstance, but they can't. So think, just venting off the back of that, like, why are teachers being maybe if they are and I'm wrong, please let me know, and we'd have a good guest on soon, actually a friend of mine who actually works in education in a couple of weeks. But like, is there any training for teachers around how to deal with kids with mental health that's built into the structure of their teacher training? Like, if anyone knows, please let us know. But if not, I think it would be needed, and if it's there, I think there needs to be more, you know?
Yeah, and I feel with that as well, like, it becomes sort of a personal relationship with a teacher and a student when they do put in the time and effort to sort of indulge into that, right? Because they do have other children in the class and things, and they can look at the child being disruptive to the other children who are trying to learn. My English teacher, no word of a lie, for 2 years, year 10 and 11, sat me at the back, gave me pens and paper to do graffiti on for 2 years. I swear to God. And I still got a D in it. Not too bad.
Yes.
Not too bad. I swear to God, year 10 and 11, that's all I've done in English, mate. That was it.
Like, he probably did, he clearly didn't want to be there himself, like, he's giving that, like...
Yeah, like, literally, that's it. And I just used to be selling sweets. That was it, mate. I loved it at the time, but when you look back on it, you think, well, that's not all right, is it? Like,
didn't do you any benefit, really, unless you turned out to be like the new Picasso or something.
That's why I don't read. It's all your fault.
I laughed earlier during quite an intimate moment. I have to apologise. You just went in this store and I fucking laughed out loud and I looked at Ollie and Ollie went, why is he laughing? So I can imagine your teacher, you was like, she'll know who she is, just at home watching this going like,
I definitely can't remember her name though. Like, she was nice. Do you know what? I had a few of them. English teachers when at school.
Mrs. Davies.
Can't remember them all, but like she did. It was good what she did, to be fair. But she saw an opportunity and it worked out to kind of. But you're right. Like there are like when I was speaking about that, I kind of wasn't mindful. There are like 30 other kids in that class, and there's obviously the teacher's well-being is for everyone, right? So. But not necessarily means it's right just to stick someone like you. To be fair, now I know you, I might have stuck you at the back of the class. To be honest with you, mate.
True, yeah.
Not really, mate.
I would have known.
Yeah.
But look, as you say, but the training needs to be there, because even they haven't got the time to do that and to indulge into one specific student too much, but they need to have the training to be able to recognise that student needs further support.
Yeah.
And they shouldn't be dismissed. This child, like for instance, sat at the back of the class, do what you want, just don't disrupt anyone else. No, maybe there's loads of ways to do it. After school, do separate classes for these kids who are struggling to engage and have one-to-ones and things. You know, I don't know. There needs to be things in place to help these kids.
I think it will change though. I think like in the whole mental health landscape that I see, like, I'm quite vocal in like the professional space and like workplace well-being and that, and mate, that's fucking changing twofolds as well. So although it's like that's pretty much like private sector, but like the public sector, I'm hopeful that things will change and like say conversations like this and our experiences of like 10 years ago, like it'd be cool to like hear this perspective of like how teenagers are doing now. And I know that there's like some good young charities out there like Young Minds UK and stuff that, you know, try and do their bit as well. But again, the difficulty is like it's so granular per location, per borough, per council, per school.
Exactly.
So it's
and we're in London.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so what about like all these towns are like just in the middle? Because like, if like, you know what I mean? That's how I don't know. That's how we think of it in with the north. Because like, what you find in a lot of those places when I've been there, like on major cities, like don't get me wrong, like there's things like, well, for young people. I'm not gonna say there's loads of things to do in London, but there's probably more things to do for young people than a lot of other places. Like I can remember when I was young, like there was a youth club in my local area and stuff like that, right? But when it goes into these towns that kind of like in limbo in a sense between these major cities, like I have a feeling that probably there's not as much for them to do there, and then that kind of leads into certain types of behaviour from those kids, which again can either lead into mental health issues or kind of accelerate mental health issues that are already being experienced. So it is a really challenging one. I think it's just more funding all round is needed, and it's going to be people like us being more vocal about this over time that will hopefully achieve that. But I think definitely your schools would be a great place to direct that funding alongside other places, because you're catching people at an early point in their lives, and the earlier you learn something, the better you become at doing it over time. So hopefully that's something that does ramp up. But yeah, just to obviously got a little bit sidetracked there. Forget what I'm in now. But I know obviously
that's the bell.
But your mental health journey as well. So I guess obviously there was obviously some real significant points there in kind of the earlier stage of your mental health journey. So kind of growing into yourself. I mean, where's I guess the real mental health issues that you've seen personally?
Yeah, so it was the big ones were obviously like the depression and anxiety. That was like kind of big. Like anxiety had come along quite later actually. That was times where like I was going to work and like couldn't leave the house without taking pictures of like the hobs all being off and like videoing myself locking the door. I just like constantly overthinking and like fucking with my sleep. But then like the depression was always the big one, and I'd always end up back there. So I was always confused by that because I'm quite a fucking outgoing, energetic guy usually, but I'd always end up in this like dark spot, and I was just like, why? Like my life's fucking quality, like especially when you've like fought through all those battles and you come out the other side of it, and like you're living in the best city in the world, got a cool job, like work, professional life, got quality social life. I have like financial stability for the first time. I have to do all the fun shit I've always wanted to do, and then I always end up in this dark spot. And I'm like, what? I was like, what is going on here? So that was one of the reasons why I started reaching out to. So I've always had like, so back in 2018, post uni, basically, I had this really bad dip where I was pretty like suicidal, and it was like the darkest I've ever been. And it was like all very like my circumstances were like I was very isolated. Like say I didn't have like connections. Like I was away from my friends, wasn't doing any hobbies, and that was like really bad. But that, since that point, and since I've picked up the phone for the first time to like a helpline, I'm very comfortable doing that now. So if I did get back to those dark places, I'm like, just ring up one of the helplines. Like once you've done it once or twice, it was great. But basically, long story short, there was yeah, so I ended up back in this spot, and I picked up the phone, called my GP, and I was like, something big is going on here, because like, why do I just keep ending up back here? Like whenever, like, and like, basically in 2020 when first lockdown hit and my anxiety was really bad, I got prescribed antidepressants. So I went on sertraline, and then basically after like I wasn't on them long. I just hated the fact because I'm like I say I got that energy. I get quite like not hyper, but I've got positive, like quite spontaneous, like a bit erratic, but like generally quite positive and like happy. And then this low depressive mood as well. But I just said to her like, sidetracked there mentally.
That's all right,
no, but with the sertraline, that's what I mean. It killed both those moods.
Yeah.
So I didn't feel the lows, which was like quality, but then also didn't feel the highs. So I just like stopped taking them. Didn't really tell my mental health team, which I should have. Definitely do that, by the way. If you come off stuff, like,
100%.
I come off them, and then basically it wasn't until like really recently after I called them up for my latest like depressive episode where I was like, something big is here. I know it. Like, do you just know? I was just like, something else is going on. Like, she was like, okay, talk me through it. And I was like, okay, it's like you prescribed me sertraline like last year. Came off them, and she was like, why did you come off them? I was like, well, like you killed my highs and my lows. And she was like, you experience highs? And I was like, yeah. Does everyone know? Like, obviously everyone has that little roller coaster, but she was like, okay, like that's interesting. Like, explain what the kind of highs are. And I was like, oh, I get like really like I quit dancey. Well, I get like I just want to like dance, and I get like loads of energy to burn off. I get loads of like ideas and like business ideas, and like I have this spontaneity to just do it. Don't really think anything through. Spontaneity and like risky behaviours socially. She was like, okay, and then she was like, have you got any family history of like a bipolar disorder? And I was like, oh, my mum has a schizoaffective disorder, which was previously like a bipolar diagnosis. And she was like, okay, yeah, like, I want you to come in and like I was like, she was like, okay, I want you to like have a further conversation about this. I was like, okay, and then yeah, like her like concern of that was, well as me being like something's wrong, I want to have like a diagnosis, like an assessment basically for a diagnosis. I pushed that myself. Those two things aligned probably with the idea of this, like the councils being different and the boroughs being more funded. I moved along the line quite quick, and I got an assessment, and found out that I was actually bipolar. Wow. So it's just like, fuck. You're like fighting that invisible enemy for all those years, knowing that like, why do I keep ending back up here?
Fuck, yeah.
Why do I behave like this? Why is this like trying to figure out what the fucking missing piece of the puzzle was for years, and then to finally get it, like it was literally ended last year, like 2021.
And what did it do for you when you did find out?
Oh, mate, like it was relief.
Yeah.
It was also that fucking like, how's it going to affect my life? Like, does it change me as a person? Like, are people going to view me differently? Like, it was like a bit overwhelming. Like, it was just like mainly relief though, that like I had the answer. But then there was a point where I don't want to, or you don't trust it, because I've seen like with my mum, for example, and like seeing people's diagnosis change. I was like, I don't know if I was like, oh, I don't know why I was doubting the professionals, but I was just like, well, I was like, what if it ain't? I was like, what if it ain't bipolar?
The mind, like this, especially if I suffer from anxiety, and in the pandemic is the worst for me. But the mind will just throw doubt in things in it, because it's anxiety almost is like a fear-based mind, and it just fear. If you're fearful of everything, you'll question everything. So that might have been why.
Literally, yeah. Like I'm quite an overthinker as well. So I was just like, and then recently I put like a post on my LinkedIn, just like to my whole network. I put it on Instagram, which I think was one of the posts you boys engaged with, and I put it on my LinkedIn just to like, as I say, I'm trying to break the barriers in professional space as well about mental health stigma. So I was like, I'm just gonna fucking put it out there, even though I was a bit nervous to. And then like it blew up and went like trending.
Yeah.
And I had like over 1,600 like reviews, 218,000 like views, and then my arsehole went.
Yeah.
I was like emailing my mental health nurse, like, fuck. I was like, what a good idea for your anxiety, mate.
Literally. But it just shows you, I guess, how much the message is needed out there, how many people can resonate with that, you know, like, because obviously otherwise it wouldn't have been trending otherwise. But I get like that must be quite overwhelming in itself, like for that, because it's more like I had a similar feeling before doing this, and it's like I don't know if I can stand everyone knowing my personal like business in a sense like that, but obviously kind of overcoming that, it's worked out being a lot better. I don't know if it had gone to 1,000 people the first episode, I probably would have had the same reaction, mate, to be honest.
But that was I can laugh at that now. At the time I was like, oh, but then all the messages were fucking unbelievable. Like, I had all these people from all over the world like DMing me and like and just sharing all their like positive experiences as well, which was nice. And then you get the people, like, I'm sure you boys get it as well, and like I have it on my social, where people come to you and they're like, how do you, like, what was the process of you getting diagnosed? Like, how my boyfriend's suffering with this, like, what advice would you give? And I'm like, well, part of me is like, I do try and give as much top line advice as I can, but I always try and pass them to like someone a bit more professional. But
same as that. Yeah, exactly. We do get a lot of like different scenarios, and it might not be the actual person themselves. Just asking for other people, and that's what we do. We're here to share our stories and our opinions, but you know, we say to everyone we're not professionals. So that's what we do. We do guide them into the right thing as well, and then just check up later on how their progress is going and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. 'Cause it's a big weight to bear for everyone, I guess. Like,
yeah, and I did see your post, because I liked your post on Instagram, and I thought, wow, like, it's really good. Like, you're open about it, and you said in there as well that you did give you relief because you've had, you know, all these missing pieces for so long, and like I feel like that as well. Like, and I always doubt myself on things like when severe anxiety, and I was like, I don't know, I think there's something more, and like, I still think that to this day that there's something that I haven't been diagnosed with correctly. It's like, how do you find out? Because with me, when they do ask me, you know, what are you going through, I really struggle to actually voice my like perfectly what's going on in your head. It's actually it's very hard, and like, of course, doing this is like helping that. But yeah, it is hard, and it's great that you actually found out in the end what it was, and it has gave you that sense of relief, and that you was open about it, and you know what, you spread that message very far with that amount of people. You don't know whose life that's going to change next.
Yeah, definitely, mate.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, honestly, hats off to you, mate. It's a really brave thing to do.
It's kind of like, I could say, it's like, don't get me wrong, and I don't want this to sound kind of like I'm saying, like, we help loads of. It's not that, but it's just like sometimes when we've got messages from people, like, you kind of don't think or buy into maybe how much of an impact someone seeing something like this has, and how that could change people's lives. And I think the only way I could kind of base on it is just like when I've kind of seen things like that myself on the flip side, like when I was, which don't get me wrong, like wasn't much, or like more just like probably when I was younger anyway, going through depression, it was probably more like when I met someone who was like maybe going through the same thing at that point. But obviously that's what we're trying to show, that we've been through that and people are resonating with that. But it just shows how much of a need for it there is from my side. I mean, like, because mental health is obviously a big issue in the UK, and for me, like, not something we've delved into so much about what's like how's men's mental health elsewhere. Obviously, there's enough of an issue here to just focus on this at the moment. But I mean, what's your perspective of kind of like, I guess, the situation on mental health as a whole in the UK at the moment?
I think it's quite a tricky one, because like, I guess because we're immersed in the community a lot more. Like, so for example, the people I follow on social and that, I see it as like I see it moving in the right direction. I think you got big role models like do you follow Dr. Alex George?
Don't, but
Like you heard of it, you know what?
Yeah,
So I follow like people like him, and like there's like a lot of people within the community that I follow. So I'm quite immersed in it. So I see it progressing and changing. But then obviously I'm now mindful that there's a lot of people that don't have that access, or like I guess like the mainstream news don't cover it.
No.
So it's like it's hard to get access to that unless you're specifically like tailoring like your intake of like media and information and stuff about it. But from what I see currently in the space, like I think it's definitely getting positive. I think I'm seeing, like say, I think us guys here are kind of a positive example. Like say, it's not like a getting too big for our boots and bigging ourselves up, being like we're fucking changing the game, but like we're actively trying to make that step and like putting our vulnerability and our egos on the line to try and break that and start a chain. Like so there's going to be more podcasts and more networks and more communities that are going to stem from like stuff like this, and like I think that's how it's going to start going. I'm seeing a lot more great stuff like super specific, so I'm seeing a lot of more like mental health for like black females and like ethnic minority female support groups and stuff, which I think is fucking amazing. So I think it's definitely getting there. It's but it's
about
so tough.
Taking the steps and just opening up, right? Yeah. And you got to have passion in it. And as you said, it takes balls to do it, because it does. Because before we started, it's something that we wanted to do for a long time. But again, like spreading your personal business to people you've never interacted with,
it's fucking scary,
some of them, it's quite scary because you don't know who's watching, right? Yeah. But I'm just at a stage in my life where I couldn't give a shit about what I'm honestly like what people think. It's like same. I'm doing what I need to do for me, and also what I know is the right thing to do. Yeah. And I'm more than happy to further this in my life, knowing that I've done something to help me and to help someone else. And as we say, if it helps one person, it doesn't matter. Job done.
Literally.
That's it. And I think one thing you said there as well about like kind of like the ego and it, like we live in a very egoic society, and that is the root cause of stigma. Because because we're trying to help people with their thoughts, but it's really people's thoughts that are maybe stopping them from taking that first line. And it's like, anyone who feels bad about it, like taking that first step, is like, wouldn't your thoughts, wouldn't they tell you to take that step? Isn't that the logical sense if it's needed? Yeah. And it kind of links into that stigma, because it's like, you can only get help if you want it. Yeah. And it's like, that may be the wrong way to phrase it, but maybe help if you're open to it, right? Because a lot of people may want help, but it's like, they just have this mental barrier where it's just not letting them do it. Well, it's like you've got like 3 people sitting in front of you who have done that, and it's had great benefits for them. So like proof's in the pudding always as well. But I just think like that ego is a big thing in this country in general, and it's like kind of you have to let that go to be able to do something like this, and just kind of be confident enough in yourself to know that to put that out there, it doesn't like anyone's perspective or what they see negative or positive doesn't change the way you think about yourself. And that, I think people need to hear that in all aspects of their life, to be honest with you, because the more you can be yourself, you're probably going to enjoy your life more, to be honest.
And it's like, you're bang on there, Dom, and it's like, people think fitting in with people who aren't doing this stuff, right, is the normal things to do. But these are normal things, because these are happening every day to people every single day. Yeah. It's more normal than fucking But no one wants to come up and talk about it, and that's what the ego and the stigma we're trying to break.
Yeah, so I was thinking about this, like I've been thinking about this a lot this week, but it was like, I wanted to like try and think of something that I could break that down to like someone like probably like the audience, for example. It's like, the thing that frustrates me about like geezers is that like we'll fucking sit behind a TV screen and critique a fucking football player all weekend, calling them fucking lazy cunt, they're shit, this, but you won't fucking ask yourself the difficult questions about yourself and like your own performances in life and fucking stuff like that. And I think that's what we need to do. Like, that's what I've done for years. And like, there are hard questions. Like, you're gonna find out loads about yourself. Like, there's people now that know me who have like followed me for years, and like, fucking 5 years, I'm like a completely different human to I was 5 years ago. Like, unrecognisable. And it's just like, I had an ego, had a front, like, just fucking wanted to be like then wanted to be like the boy and be one of the fucking lads. And then after a few years, I was like, fuck this, like. It's so exhausting trying to be someone I'm not.
Yeah, it's not what people. It's like really truthfully, and I don't think it's what most men really want. It's not what they want, but it's the collective
Yeah.
stigma and the collective mindset of people. And so like it's like doing something like this is like, are you going to be the one that kind of faces backwards towards the group, or are you going to face looking in with everyone else?
Yeah,
it's easier to look in, right? But you just nipped in the bud there. That's a great analogy, like, because like people will do sit there and like literally just, or anything, or the paper, or anybody but themselves,
anything to critique, literally
anybody but themselves, because they don't want to ask those hard questions. But generally, like the growth and like how much you learn about yourself from asking those questions is so impactful. It's like sometimes I sit there and like, not necessarily always about myself, just even if I want to know what I think about something, just sit there, have clearness of mind, and just present a question to myself and see what your mind comes back with. Because I'll tell you what, it's like people want to listen to their thoughts about how they feel. Sit there and ask yourself, how do I feel, and see if your thoughts tell you anything. It's like, you're gonna have blanket silence, right? Because that's what you're not meant to go through life constantly having your thoughts in your mind, which is what anxiety is. And I can tell you for free, like that's not how we're meant to live day in, day out, right? Like you've got to be able to put that at rest a little bit. But significantly, I've moved away from my ego the last couple of years, and I had a massive ego, like especially as a younger kid, right? And like what helped me doing that, I always push it, but meditation was probably the main thing for me, and kind of actually just separating yourself from your mind and learning who you are, not just listening to everything that comes into your head. But again, like it takes a certain type of mindset and kind of readiness to kind of enter that, I guess, or that perspective of things to take that step. But I feel like hopefully people watching stuff like this will be opening their minds to be a bit more, I guess, open to those types of conversations.
I bet the audience out of like us three sat here, if they could put a 10 on who was going to talk about meditation, it weren't going to be me. It's going to be the geezer with the long hair.
Literally, mate. I can't get enough of it though, mate. Do you meditate yourself?
No.
No, oh, mate. Like, do you know?
I don't smoke weed either, if you're going to ask.
Were you at Woodstock? Nah, but mate, I generally recommend it for anyone, like, because it was one of the biggest game changers for me, anxiety, right? But yeah, like I generally could tell you, right, like someone I used to work with, she meditated, right, and I could tell you, like, literally 3 years ago, she said she tried meditating. I was like, why the fuck would I try that? I was like, I'm not into all that shit. Listen, get out of here, mate. You know what I mean? But like now I can't get. Like, I'm trying to take like 10, 15 minutes where I can. So like that, and then like change, and it's like literally you all change like. Kind of doing these things, right? I don't mean meditation, but kind of being honest with yourself and kind of identifying. You'll see growth and change in your life to places where you didn't think was a possibility for you. Like not saying it's like this is what looking in the future. Like this is what I want to be. I want to be this, because there's only now. Like I can only impact and be who I want to be in this moment, right? But thinking like that and taking those steps, you're probably going to find you closer to your goals in a matter of time, rather than like just thinking, like obviously I'm a boy, like here's my targets, bow. That's the change. The change comes from within, and then from within we project what we want on the outside. You know, getting a bit spiritual now, aren't I?
No, mate. It's right though. It's right. Like you really have to get grounded and stop focusing on what other people's goals are and trying to familiarize yourself with their goals and making them your own. But really and truly, that might not be what you want to do.
Literally,
you got to be yourself. Like, and this past year, I think for me is like where I've come into that sort of mind frame where I'm actually happy with life at the minute, right? And I'm going at my pace and I'm doing what I want to do, and that works for me. Do you get me?
That's so good.
I'm telling you, I don't really give a shit about what people have to think of that or what people's perspectives are on it, because like if you're my people and you know you're someone close to me, that's it, man. You're gonna love people seeing you happy.
The more, I think one thing I've noticed, I'm same as you. Like once you've found that little balance and you know what works, what doesn't work, who you want to be around, like. Once you find out what clicks for you and you just back yourself and you go through that, like I'm gonna go spiritual now, like that vibe attracts your tribe feel.
About time,
Got my healing crystals in my pocket.
Mine around my neck.
I hope there's a full
No,
moon
but like,
outside.
your energy, the energy you put out, like the reason we fucking connected and was like we got the same. Oh, that's weird, isn't it? Vibe.
The V word.
Namaste. No, but like, like you do your energy, and I've noticed that I've attracted like my friendship group now, fucking the best I've probably had in my life, and it's because like just being myself, know what I want, and people have to learn to respect your boundaries. And once you start backing your own boundaries, and like, I'm a like
saying no's powerful.
Yeah.
Like,
so literally, like when you, especially like as a bloke in a pub and that, like I'm part of a rugby team and like been around like some pretty like masculine cultures and that, but like I'm at the point now where like if I don't want to do it, I won't. So if my mates are chanting me to down a pint, I'm the first person to be like, fuck off. Paid £6 for this. I want to enjoy it. Like, and then, but if I'm in the right mood and I kind of like, it'd be a bit of a laugh, I'll do it. But like, I'm gonna have that. I'm gonna put my foot down, and that's a small. It seems like a small thing, but like once you're like in a bit of a pressured environment, and like say your ego's on the line,
it's a massive thing. Sorry, it is a massive thing. Yeah, because once you do that, people understand he wants to enjoy his pint. Like that's him.
Yeah.
Like that's how he is. They don't do that shit anymore. Then
No.
you're like, I'm not gonna back a pint. I don't want to back a pint.
literally.
You know what I mean? Don't get me wrong. I can back a pint.
I would do it if I wanted to.
Do it if I want to. You see me do it.
That's one of the reasons I've done it. I'm too busy of getting recorded and it taking fucking 20 seconds for me to get through a pint. No, it's true, and it can go like I say, it's crossover to lots of things. It's like, come out, mate, just come out with us. You're like, I don't fucking want to.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just feel like, because like, don't get me wrong, like I'm definitely someone. There's probably been times I've done that to people.
Same, right? 100%.
But we ain't friends if you don't come out.
Yeah.
But it's like you feel.
Yeah, you have.
Listen, I'll disown you. You'll never see me again. You know what I mean?
You're gonna do me like that.
But it's like, the weird thing is, it's like you probably feel more guilty on the other side if you don't go. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's like, it's just. But then if you get pulled into that every single time, and it's like, and generally if you're saying no to a situation, it's probably because you don't want to do it. You know, you know what I mean? And generally there's a reason behind not wanting to do something. So, and again, it comes back to them things as like just kind of being yourself and listening to yourself. You know.
That's it.
But yeah, I think like it kind of brings us into like an interesting point that you definitely mentioned to us before coming on as well, kind of about the problem of like toxic masculinity in the UK and how that links into the stigma. I think definitely probably touched on it a little bit there, but for me, I think that if there wasn't that kind of like trying to be like if you are a man's man, you want to be a man's man, like, be who you are, right? If that's who you are. But I think there's a stigma where a lot of people try to be that way or come across that way, and that may be not who they are internally. I mean, what damage does that have, I guess, to the mental health collective as a whole?
Yeah, there you go, Ollie, you go.
No, go for it. I was going to ask you, of course, because I think this is something that you're quite passionate about as well. So it'd be good to get your opinion on that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit of an interesting one. As I say, I've got a tattoo there of because I am passionate about it. I still like. So for me, like I'm from, like I say, I grew up around my pretty masculine background, like as a teenager, like, as a young boy. So my dad was in the army for like 22 years. My brother was pretty notorious in our like village for being like hard, which ain't much because there's like 6 other people in it. Just one banging ducks. But like, no, it was like a lot to kind of pressure I put myself from a teenage age of being like tough. I was always a bit more of the sensitive one, to be honest, like always have been. And then I went through like a space as an angry teenager through like depression where like my mum had enough of it. Put me in kickboxing. Basically, I got into like martial arts, and I was like an MMA fighter for like 6 years.
Oh, really?
Seen that?
Yeah.
I want to ask you.
And like, look at me now. You're like, what?
Yeah.
But
MMA,
again,
meditating, loads of curveballs, man.
But like again, like it was a massive thing for me. It helped me with so much in my life and like the connections of that. But like, I think like I still reflect on it now, but like a lot of it, I think I'd probably got into it for some of the wrong reasons, or like at a younger age in it. Like I used to fucking live up to that. Oh, I'm fucking hard. Like I want to be hard. Like, I want to be like fucking this. I want to be that. And then like the reality was like I was losing fights because I didn't have that. Part of my personality probably wasn't aligned to it. I didn't have a lot of that venom that you needed. Like although I won a couple of fights, like I lost more, and it was just like parking that ego and being like, look, is this actually a bit of you? Do you actually want to do it? And having those difficult conversations because it's been a massive part of my life, and I did enjoy it. I was okay at it, and it benefited me in more ways than one, like in terms of like mentally and stuff. But yeah, like I just like, and then after that, just wanting to be fucking like I say, you wanted to be something you're not really. So like one thing that I think like, is big that I think is overlooked, especially as a bloke in community, is stuff like dating and like your relationship with girls is like. Like it's sort of reputation in it to like shag as many girls as you can, like brag about it. If you treat girls like treating girls badly is almost like fucking cool. And like, I'm not an angel. Like I've been like in situations where I haven't fucking been great to people, and I'm like on that journey now where it's like actually a lot of the stuff like the bad behaviours, like the masculine behaviours of like ghosted her, or like just leading people on or whatever it is. Like it's like a reflection of the behaviours that we mask and bottle up.
definitely. I think like at the moment, I think it's like there's definitely that side of things, and I think it's become a thing of people as a whole.
Yeah,
Sometimes feel like it's good to be, or if you could like, it's just classic, put someone else down and they might feel better themselves.
Protecting yourself,
that doesn't last for long ever. Like, do you know what I mean? Because generally it's just like, probably you just get more from life being nice to people and being a good person. But I think definitely it's become a mindset where it's like those things are kind of like, what's the best word? Accepted more and like bantered about. But and I think like obviously it's probably very different for men and women, but or even on women's side, like I don't know how it would be on that side because I'm not in those conversations. But I can just say from what I've seen of people is both people can be as nasty as each other, and it's just like, and you'll find that people who are maybe in a mindset where they are willing to be like horrible to other people.
Very true, mate.
It is.
Listen, both parties can be horrible people.
Yeah.
And especially when when one person does it,
it's accepted by.
It's accepted, and then they want to do it. Next thing you're in that toxic shit.
Yeah.
Been there before.
Yeah.
Yeah. As you said, I ain't proud of the things that I've done. Yeah. I've been like that. I haven't been the nicest person in relationships, but
like I say, since you become more comfortable and like the ego and stuff, you can have those those conversations where there's like. Yeah, I don't know where I was going with that one, but I think it's an important one to have because like there's been like like you say,
it's very important in all aspects. And you're right in what you're saying. It is a big ego thing. It is trying to live up to what other people are doing and get the approval of someone else.
Yeah, literally.
It's just about approval, and it's like finding that acceptance, but that's the wrong acceptance to find.
Literally,
because you're not being a leader, you're being a fucking sheep.
Literally,
and that's it. And once you come out of that, it's like a form of growing up, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you get to like you feel like a man when you start doing man things. Treating a woman nice, doing nice things. Looking after yourself. All these things come into play.
I feel like a real person doing good things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You feel like a person, like we're all in this together, you know. Like so, it's like let's just try and make it a good experience for everyone. You know,
everyone's on different journeys, but you're all going to like the same.
That's it.
You want the same thing, don't you? So it's tough.
Because when I get there, I'm not trying to have murders. You know what I mean?
Yeah. She's like, I've been fucking waiting for you to get there.
I've seen what you've done.
She's at the door like, don't let him in. But I think.
What time do you call this?
Sorry, no, mate. But I think also it's like obviously what's really good, as we said already, is like we're all kind of aligned and kind of like we want to better the mental health for it's just a situation for everyone in the country.
Yeah.
So I think obviously we obviously spoke a little bit about Chaps Chat and how you came across us. So I know you've obviously got your own platform that you've been doing some really good work with. So gents who vent, who have an Instagram page that we'll add below, and obviously all your other socials. But do you just want to tell us a little bit about your journey on that side with that as well?
Sure, yeah. No, so obviously my main social I use like Mairs, Let's Talk was like my personal story and stuff. But like what I was having was like people saw me as like the person that was like vocal about stuff. And basically I had like a lot of people that were coming to me for like their life stuff. Blokes typically, like, and completely different, like proper wide range of audiences. Like I had people in their like 30s, 40s, like young guys, and they were all kind of struggling. They were coming to me, and at the time I was going through like my own, like my latest depressive episode. I was like, "Fuck me, bro, I can't juggle all this." So I was like, "Do you know what? Yeah, I'm just gonna slam you all in a group chat together." I was just like, and I was like, okay, like, and again, like I'm quite a creative thinker. Like I have all these weird ideas. So I was like, think of a fucking catchy name. Like, what's gonna stick? And I was like, Gents Who Vent. I was like, yeah, bang. Went on Canva, made a little thing, just threw, and I just kind of was like, oh, would you be interested in being like a WhatsApp group about this? And they were like, yeah, actually, that sounds cool. And yeah, like I threw like 5 different boys in there. Some of them knew of each other, but didn't know they were struggling. Some did. And yeah, it just went from there, and I kind of like started creating like these house rules because you learn like all the politics and like some ropey ground to follow because it's people's safety, isn't it? So like created these like house rules, and then it just kind of branched out from there. So I think we've got like over 30 blokes in there now from like all over the world. Got a guy in there from Canada, a guy from the US, got a guy, 2 blokes that are currently based in Asia. We've got a few boys based all over the UK, and it's just nice, like all different ages. Some have got family, some ain't.
Nice, mate.
It's just like, yeah, so it's just like, and then if they've got like a problem, they just put it in the chat, and if I don't have the mental capacity to reply to it, someone else will. It's one of those, like you say, it helps you, but it also helps like the wider thing. So I put my advice, like what I need help with in there, and it's just nice.
Brilliant. That's good, mate. That's really nice to hear, to be fair, isn't it?
There's
good
not
idea
enough of that. Well, it's like some good. It's like you create a support network basically for everyone as well. But where it's like again, like obviously you can again, like kind of similar to having you on here, not just, we can't just leverage our own experiences to help people, but you can kind of, everyone can leverage their experiences to help each other, which is just more knowledge, which is never going to be a bad thing, right? But yeah, well, definitely we'll add all your socials down there, and I think there's definitely a very strong message to be seen and a different perspective than Chaps Chat as well. So I would obviously advise anyone who likes watching Chaps Chat or sees our page, definitely need to check out Ryan's page as well. But we're coming to the end of our chat now, which it's been
emotional.
Been fucking great, mate. It's been really good. Like, I think, again, like, just your perspective and kind of what you've experienced is going to be really good for our listeners and anyone new who listens, just because it's a different one from ours. But hopefully, obviously, there's be some of your viewers that can see it and learn stuff from our perspective as well. But thanks a lot for coming on and meeting us. It's been a pleasure. And so hopefully potentially down the line again, if you be obviously keen to collaborate with people. So I feel like there's obviously more that we probably all have experience to talk about as well. But yeah, guys, this has been Chaps Chat with me, Dom, Ryan, and
your boy Ollie.
We'll see you next week, guys. Thanks a lot. Cheers.